Hello and welcome back to my 10 favorite people. Hope you're doing well. I'm incredibly excited for today's video because yesterday Bitcoin set its record for its best daily gains in its history. And this is pretty insane because just 2 days ago we declared that Bitcoin officially entered its expansion phase and it was trading at around 76,000, and here we are just 2 days later with Bitcoin trading around $88,000 per coin. And obviously the market has gotten incredibly excited over this. MicroStrategy announced they bought another $2 billion worth of Bitcoin. We're seeing huge inflows piling into the Bitcoin spot ETFs. And for the first time since April of this year, we officially have the market back in extreme greed on the Fear and Greed Index, something that we don't really see too often. And now this doesn't mean the market has to roll over immediately. It can stay in the extreme greed region for a while. But let's talk about the various scenarios and what I think is most likely going forward. Now, the first thing to mention is there's really only two interesting areas on this chart. There's the mid 90,000s where we could expect a lot of sell pressure as investors front run 100K. And we also have the previous all-time high region in the mid 70,000s. And these are the only two areas that really matter in my opinion, because if Bitcoin is able to somehow get a weekly close above this general area, sky is the limit. But if Bitcoin were to lose that previous all-time high region, I think we can most likely pack it up for this cycle. So let's go ahead and start with the easy cycle scenario and why I've updated this to be the most likely, with the short cycle scenario as a close second. And the main reason for that can really be summed up with just one word, and that word is momentum. We know Bitcoin has been flying ever since we got that breakout confirmation above 71,000, just like the breakout confirmation above 42K back in February of this year, and just like the breakout confirmation above 30K in October of last year, same thing in April of 2023, and same thing in January of 2023. These strong breakouts tend to have a lot of momentum behind them, especially after huge consolidations. So jumping in front of this train and trying to short this market or selling everything hoping that you're going to time the top is a very great way to lose money and end up FOMOing back in at higher prices. And the best thing about price discovery is there really aren't any clear resistance levels. I only have one line left on my main Bitcoin chart. I went ahead and threw a line here at 90,000 because that's our current local high. But really our previous all-time high at about 74,000 is all that matters. And as long as Bitcoin is closing weekly candles above that level, it's really hard to make any short-term bearish arguments in terms of Bitcoin's price action. Not to mention, we know how crazy Bitcoin can get in Q4 with its volatility. In years where we have seen a very strong November, we've seen continuation after the fact in December as well. I don't expect this trend to change, even though it's a possibility that it could. And I've seen so many people lose money over the years trying to play the hero and call the top over and over and over again and try to sell everything so they can buy back in lower, or short the market on leverage and make back all of the missed opportunity they did not take advantage of by being sidelined. So for me, I really want to keep this easy cycle scenario in the back of my mind in case this momentum holds up for longer than most people expect and we see Bitcoin go higher. And that's why the easy cycle as of right now does seem the most likely. Now, the short cycle scenario is a close second in my opinion, because I do consider 90K plus Bitcoin quite expensive, at least for me. I am not interested in buying anywhere near these prices, and usually these big round numbers at these psychological levels like 90K, or more importantly 100K per Bitcoin, do tend to act as resistance, and I am expecting the market to front run that major 100K level. I'm just not willing to sell everything hoping that we see a big rejection at those prices. Another good argument for why 100K Bitcoin could get front run and we can see this short cycle scenario is what we've been seeing with the US dollar index. It continues to grind higher, and Bitcoin has been able to ignore that for now, but I don't know if Bitcoin will be able to ignore this forever, especially as we continue to see this falling liquidity Again, Bitcoin can ignore it in the short term, but those massive mania phases historically have required the dollar index to go down. Perhaps we're just following the 2016 playbook and it's going to roll over early 2025. But until that rollover ends up happening, I am open to the possibility that we do see Bitcoin see a larger correction before we actually break 100K. And that's also the backdrop that's been required for our past two major alt seasons as well. Altcoins have been dragged up by Bitcoin recently, but it's hard to expect that altcoin outperformance until we see the dollar index actually roll over aggressively here. Now, there is some optimistic news. We do have a major FOMC meeting coming up in December where the Fed is going to give us their projections for the upcoming year. That would be the perfect meeting for them to announce QE, but until we actually have that FOMC meeting, it's hard to know for sure. So I'm definitely open to this short cycle scenario playing out, but as long as Bitcoin is trading below 100K and above the previous swing top, it's kind of a coin flip on which scenario we're going to end up getting, and we're going to have to wait and see what happens with macro and whether Bitcoin can continue carrying on with this momentum before jumping to any conclusions. As for the difficult cycle scenario, this one is a little bit less likely in my opinion, because if we were to see a large correction here in the near future, I have a hard time believing that everyone is going to get a perfect opportunity to rebuy the previous all-time high and then ride Bitcoin significantly higher. If we do get a huge correction and break structure after such a strong breakout, after that 7-month reaccumulation period, it would really be a huge warning sign that perhaps the cycle is over, and this big washout before rallying higher is a bit less likely in my opinion. As for the broken cycle scenario, still very unlikely in my opinion, especially with current structure. If we get a large rejection in the mid 90,000s in the near future and we see Bitcoin lose its previous all-time high, then we can start talking about these doomer scenarios. But as of right now, nothing on this chart is telling me to expect that type of outcome because of the strong price action we've seen ever since we broke above that previous all-time high. But for now, I'm just calmly sitting in my existing positions. I do have my cash position in case some opportunities are presented by any corrections or pullbacks here, but then I have the majority of my portfolio still in spot holdings in case Bitcoin is able to get that breakout over the next few weeks or so. I can be there to take advantage of that major upside via the majority of my portfolio and holdings. We're still seeing Bitcoin outperforming the majority of altcoins for this year, which is quite incredible, and usually what you'd expect on large Bitcoin breakouts. It steals all of the liquidity and excitement from the market, and then we see the rotation to altcoins later on. As of right now, we have Ethereum getting rejected at its range mid-level and perhaps consolidating before it can finally get a break higher. They are definitely trying to come up with narratives and excitement to do so. We're now seeing talks of Ethereum 3.0. 2.0 wasn't good enough to pump our bags, but perhaps this new 3.0 could do the trick. We're also seeing proposals to rename the Beacon chain, which is a pretty lame name, to something a lot more appealing like a Beam chain. And hopefully that better name will finally give Ethereum some signs of life. We are finally seeing some decent spot ETF inflows coming into the Ethereum ETFs, but we'll have to monitor this trend and monitor the price action to see if Ethereum can finally break through that range mid-level and start targeting those higher prices. As for Solana, still holding above our very important pivot at about $200. As long as we're closing weekly candles above this level, we have to expect higher prices. Close back below it, and then we can start talking about some early warning signs. But as of right now, it looks like Solana and Ethereum are just consolidating while Bitcoin steals the show. As for traditional markets, the S&P 500 is having a bit of a consolidation to start the week off, but no major warning signs as of right now. And as long as the S&P 500 remains bullish, that's a perfect backdrop for Bitcoin to continue higher. And as we look forward at the longer term, we're still expecting the federal deficit to increase just like it has over the past few years, which keeps me bullish on money supply expansion as that fiat currency gets debased. So I have to expect further upside on risk assets like the S&P 500, just like we've seen over the past few years and past few decades. And that also makes me bullish on Bitcoin in the longer term as well. But anyway, let me know what you expect. I know there's a lot of people who get incredibly frustrated whenever I make any changes to these charts, but I have to look at the data the market is providing and change my outlook appropriately. I know it's a lot more popular to only be a mega bull expecting 200K or a mega bear expecting a crash, but being prepared for multiple scenarios has worked out for us wonderfully over the past few months. So I don't plan on changing that strategy anytime soon. And for now, all we can do is wait and see if Bitcoin is finally going to get that close above 100K, which would open the door towards higher prices, or if we're going to lose that previous all-time high and have to start talking about lower prices. But as of right now, anything between 90K and 70K is noise in my opinion. So let me know what you expect. Do you disagree with these different probabilities? What situation do you think is the most likely? As always, thank you so much for the support on the recent videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.